When Russia invaded Ukraine, the world asked one question: where does it stop? Now, NATO's eastern flank, Poland and the Baltic states, has become the next line in the sand. These countries aren't just neighbors to Ukraine, they are NATO members. And under Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. The stakes could not be higher. Tonight, we break down what a Russian move on Poland or the Baltics would mean, and whether NATO is truly ready to defend its red line. Let's start with geography. Poland sits at the heart of NATO's eastern flank, a gateway between Western Europe and the front lines of Ukraine. It is home to over 10 NATO bases, U.S. missile defense systems, and one of the largest stockpiles of tanks and artillery outside the United States. Now look north: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the Baltics. Three small nations with a combined population of less than 7 million, but they sit directly on Russia's doorstep, bordering Kaliningrad, one of Moscow's most heavily militarized regions. Together, Poland and the Baltics are NATO's shield. Lose them, and the path into Western Europe lies open. Moscow's doctrine is clear. Russia views NATO's expansion eastward as a threat to its very survival. That's why the Kremlin has been pouring resources into Kaliningrad, deploying nuclear-capable Iskander missiles, air defense systems, and even naval forces in the Baltic Sea. For Putin, testing NATO's credibility in Poland or the Baltics would mean forcing the alliance to make a choice: defend its members at full risk of war, or hesitate, and risk collapse from within. This brings us to NATO's ultimate promise, Article 5. Written in 1949, it states that an attack on one ally is an attack on all. But here's the reality. Article 5 has only been triggered once, after 9/11, never against Russia. If Russia were to move against a Baltic state, NATO would face its greatest test in history. Would 31 nations truly send their soldiers to fight on the front lines against Moscow? Or would hesitation fracture the alliance? Let's talk numbers. NATO has deployed multinational battle groups in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, about 10,000 troops combined, led by the US, UK, Canada, and Germany. Compare that to Russia's forces, over 100,000 soldiers in its Western Military District, plus reserves in Belarus. On paper, Moscow has the advantage, but NATO has one critical edge: logistics. Reinforcements from across Europe and the US can flow quickly into Poland through what's called the Suwałki Gap, a narrow land corridor that connects Poland to the Baltics. Protecting this gap is NATO's single most important mission in the East. Poland is no longer just a buffer state. It has become NATO's frontline fortress. In 2025, Warsaw is spending over 4% of its GDP on defense, more than double the NATO target. It's buying U.S. Abrams tanks, F-35 jets, and South Korean rocket artillery. But Poland isn't only defending itself. It's also the lifeline for Ukraine, hosting supply hubs, training camps, and refugee support. If Russia escalates into Poland, it's not just NATO territory at risk. It's the entire backbone of Ukraine's war effort. Here's the haunting question. Would Putin really cross NATO's red line? Some analysts say no, because it risks all-out war with the West. Others argue yes, precisely because he believes NATO will hesitate. A cyber attack on Poland's power grid, a missile accidentally striking Lithuania, a Little Green Men operation, Russian forces without insignia crossing into Estonia. Any of these could be a test, and each one would force NATO to prove whether Article 5 is just words, or a promise written in steel. Ukraine is the battlefield today, but Poland and the Baltics are the red line for tomorrow. If Moscow crosses it, the world doesn't just face another regional war. It faces the possibility of the biggest conflict since 1945. The question is not just whether NATO can hold the line, but whether it will